Hi guys, you're welcome back to my channel. All right, so if you're just coming across my video, you're highly welcome. My name is Stella. Okay, so today we're going to be making this lovely off-shoulder dress with cape. All right, with a slight change to the lower part. Okay, that's exactly what my client requested. So we are just having a slight change to the lower part. Okay, so let's jump right into the video. Now, I already have a detailed video on how to draft an off-shoulder pattern. All right, so I have already gone ahead to draft my off-shoulder pattern and I made use of the method 1. So we'll proceed to label. All right, so this is my cleavage line or my off-shoulder point. Okay, and here's my chest line, here's my bust point line, and here's my under bust length and the front length or your half length. Okay, now the same applies to the back, cleave line, chest length, and here's my back length. Okay, so I went ahead to tighten the center back with 1 inch. Okay, and I also marked my cleave line. Now my cleave line is 5.5 inches. Okay, now if you've not seen my off-shoulder video, I'll leave the link in the description box. Okay, it's a very detailed video. I made use of 2 methods of drafting your off-shoulder, so it's super detailed. All right, now that's it. So we'll proceed to cut out these 2 patterns. All right, so I'll just separate them so that we'll begin our alteration. Okay, and here we have it. Now I'll keep the back aside and we will start with the front. Okay, so here is our front pattern. Now we'll proceed to cut. Okay, now we need to cut to the bust point so that we can close the bust dart. All right, now we have lots of videos on how to close bust dart, but I'll repeat the process again. Kindly raise your pattern along your marked line, okay, and rest it on the bust point length. Then use your paper tape or your masking tape to hold that down permanently, and that's it. You close your bust dart. Now let's go ahead and connect the side front, okay, to the 0.5 that I used to tighten the waist length, and this is it. We are done with the sides. Okay, so we'll go ahead and extend our new armhole, okay, to touch our side front, and we have done that. Now it's time for us to through our darts. Okay, and you remember the reason for this is to ensure that when you're done transferring your pattern to your fabric, all your fabric is going to be equal. Okay, now let's proceed to mark the neckline. So we're coming down with 1 inch. Okay, so the neck depth we're working with for the front is 1 inch, and I'll proceed to just connect it using a straight line. You are free to make use of the neckline of your choice, okay, but this is the one I want. All right, and this is it. We're done with the neckline. Now let's proceed to cut. Okay, so this is what we have. Now we're no longer making use of this other part anymore. Now let's proceed to finish up our cutting. All right, now I would like to blend my bust point just a little. Okay, it's not compulsory, but I just want to blend it a little. Okay, then so let's proceed to cut out. You can see that what I blended is not even that noticeable. Okay, and here we have it. So here's my side front. All right, and here's my center front. Now labeling is very key, okay, so that you don't misplace your patterns. Okay, now I'll go ahead and bring in the back and we will proceed with the alteration. Now the first thing we're doing to the back is to mark our back neckline, and I'm making use of 1 inch, okay, for my back neckline. Now it's totally your choice. All right, so the next thing we're doing is to go ahead and close the dart. Now closing of the dart is optional. You can go ahead and cut yours, okay, or you can close it. But before then, let's label. So here's my center back and my side back. Now let's proceed to close the dart. All right, like I was saying, you can go ahead and cut yours so that you will have 2 pattern pieces on your back. Okay, but I just want to close mine. All right, and the closing process is still the same. You raise your pattern along your marked leg, okay, and you rest it on the second that leg. All right, just like I'm doing now. I'll come in with my paper tape and I'm going to permanently close the back dart. Okay. And here we have it. I have closed the back dart. All right, now it's time for us to connect the back neckline. Remember, we came down by 1 inch, so I'll also use a straight line to connect to that 1 inch. Okay, and here we have it. Our back neckline is ready, so we'll proceed now to cut out. All right. Alright, so we have cut out our back pattern. Now we don't need this other pattern anymore. Okay, so from the waistline we will need to go up by 0.5 inch. Remember, we are making a dress. Okay, so for your center back to sit perfectly well, for your waistline at the back to sit perfectly well, you need to go up by 0.5 inch on your center back line. Okay, now you need to connect it to your side back, okay, with a straight line. So just pay attention to what I'm doing. I went up on the center back line by 0.5 and I connected it to the side back. Now I will go ahead and cut off this. Okay. All right, and our back pattern is ready. So it's this simple. Now I'll come in with the front pattern. So this is our complete pattern set, okay, and it's ready. So I'll go ahead and transfer this to our fabric, okay, but before then let's look at the skirt part, okay, or the lower part. Now we need to do a little bit of writing. All right, so the total dress length that we're working with is 63 inches, okay, so the full dress length is 63 inches. Now her half length or her front length, okay, is 17 inches. So I'll go ahead and write that down. Now if you subtract 17 inches from 63 inches, you'll be left with 46 inches. Okay, so 46 inches is the skirt length. All right, so everything from the waist to the floor is 46 inches. All right, so all our calculations are going to be based on this 46 inches. Now let's break it down further. So from her waist to her knee is 18.5 inches. All right, so from her waist to her knee is 18.5 inches. Now if you subtract 18.5 inches from the total skirt length that we got as 46 inches, we'll be left with 27.5 inches. All right, so this 27.5 inches is now our flare length, okay, because if we take a look at the style, you will see that the style has from the waist to the knee and it has the flare. So the total flare length we're working with is 27.5 inches. Now we have three things, okay, we have the dress length of 63, half length of 17, waist to knee length of 18.5 and the flare length of 27.5 inches. Okay, these are the key measurements we are working with. Now I have already gone ahead to draft the skirt part, okay, that's from her waist to her knee. So here we have it. What we have here is from her waist to her knee. Okay, so this is the back skirt pattern and the other one is the front. Okay, so the length is 18.5 inches. I also added my 1 inch allowance, okay, half inch for the joining to the flare and half inch for joining to the half length. Okay, this is the front pattern as well. I did the same. Okay, so this is it for the skirt. Okay, I'll call it the upper skirt. Now let's look at the flare. So this flare is going to be a 180 degrees flare, okay, because that's the only way that we can get this length. All right, now so the next thing we need to calculate is the radius. Okay, so and to calculate the radius we will need to add the round measurements. Okay, so by the round measurement, I'm referring to the round knee measurements. Okay, so here's the skirt pattern. Now we need to measure the knee measurements. Okay, so the knee of the front, okay, is where we're starting from. All right, so I'll come in with my tape and I'll measure the knee of the front, and what we have there is 7.25. Now I will continue from that 7.25 to measure the knee of the back, and I have 16.5 inches. Now 16.5 inches multiplied by 2 will give us 33 inches. So this is the round knee of the skirt. Okay, now we need an extra just so that we can be able to pleat the flare. Okay, and we will add an extra of 20 inches to the round knee of 33. Okay, and that will give us 53 inches. All right, because if you take a look at the style, you will see that it has some pleats. Okay, so now to get the radius, we are simply going to do 53 inches divided by 3.14. All right, and that will give us 16.8 inches. Okay, now to know the extent of the folding, we're simply going to add 1 inch allowance, okay, to the flare of 27.5. So we're adding 1 inch, which is half inch for attaching to the skirt and half inch for hemming. So that will give us 28.5. So to know the extent of the folding of our fabric, we're simply going to do 16.8 inches radius plus 28.5 inches flare length. Okay, and that will give us 45. So we'll just round that up to 45 because the fabric is by 45. All right, so I'll come in with the fabric and we'll fold. Okay, now here's the fabric that we're working with. So obviously we're making use of Idor face satin. Okay, we'll make use of our bra cups as usual, and here's the fabric. We're also going to make use of our interfacing hairstay, okay, just to give it more stability. All right, so I'll go ahead and transfer all our patterns. That's our half length and our flare that we just calculated to the fabric and our cutout. Okay, and here we have it. I have transferred all our patterns to fabric. I have also added my sewing allowances. Okay, so we have 2 inches as our side seam allowance, and I added half inch round. Okay, so this is the side front. Now for the center front, I did the same thing. Okay, we have half inch round. Now let's look at the back pattern. So I added 1 inch for my zip allowance. Okay, half inch on the waist, half inch on the neckline, and 2 inches as our side seam allowance. Now I interfaced both the fashion fabric and the lining. Okay, so this is it. Now let's look at the skirt part. All right, so I already added my half inch to the pattern. Now I simply added 1 inch as our zip allowance and 2 inches as my side seam allowance. Now I also transferred my darts, okay, to the skirt. I marked it both on the fashion fabric and the lining. I also marked my 1 inch zip allowance all the way to the hem or to the knee length of the skirt. Okay, so I'll use a loose stitch all the way to the hip length, and from the hip length I'll use a tie stitch to the knee length of the skirt, and I'll go ahead and hold the dart. Okay, so I'll do all these joinings. I will give them a good press. Okay, and we'll continue. So here we have it for the front. Okay, so I have also iron down my interfacing to both the fashion fabric and the lining of the front skirt. Okay, now I will go ahead and join all this fabric and we'll proceed. So here we have it. I have joined the back, all right, and I gave it a good press. Okay, so I joined the half length of the back to the skirt. All right, I did the same thing on the front. So we have the front skirt and the half length, okay, joined. All right, and I pressed it open, as you can see. Now, I have also marked my shaping so that when it's time, it will be very easy for me to just proceed to join. Now, here is the lining of the back, okay? So I have it joined, the half length to the skirt part. I have also attached my bra cup to the lining, okay? I like to attach my bra cups to the lining, okay? Now, we'll proceed to cut the cape, which I will consider the interesting part. So let's look at a little calculation of the cape, okay? Now, we will start with the front, okay? So we need to measure the neckline of the front, okay? We also need to measure the neckline of the back, all right? And we need her total off-shoulder round, all right? And the off-shoulder round that we're working with is 38 inches. So I'll go ahead and write that down. But first, we need the neckline of the front and the neckline of the back. Then finally, the off-shoulder round, okay? And the her off-shoulder round that we're working with is 38 inches, okay? So I'll go ahead and write that down. Now, I'll come in with the fabric and we'll begin our measurements, okay? So let's start with the back. So I'll come in with my tape and we're going to measure the neckline. Now, I have not fixed my zip, so it's advisable that you measure this before you proceed to fix your zip. So I'm measuring from one armhole to the other, okay? And what I have there is 12 inches, okay? Now, I'll come in with the front piece and we're going to measure the neckline of the front. So I'll place my tape also from one armhole to the other and for the front, okay? Now, when measuring your neckline, you need to stretch it out properly, okay? And what I have here is 12.25 inches. All right, I'll come in with our paper and we will need to write that down. Okay, remember we got 12.25 inches. Now, if you add these two up, we will get 24.25. Okay, so 12.25 plus 12 inches, we have 24.25 inches. So that's our total neckline on the fabric. So we need to subtract this from her off-shoulder round. All right, so we're subtracting it from her off-shoulder round of 38 inches and we're left with 13.75. Now, 13.75 is her sleeve, okay? And we'll proceed to divide this into two. So the 13.75 is simply, is just for her sleeve, okay? That's the easiest explanation. Now, we divide it by 2 and that will give us 6.8 inches, okay? So, I'll come in with our pattern paper and we're going to go ahead and draft the cape, okay? So, here's the pattern paper that we're going to be working with. Now, we will begin our drafting, okay? So now for each of these measurements, we're going to subtract 1 inch. So we're subtracting 1 inch from the neckline of the front and from the neckline of the back. The reason is this. Remember that the fabric that we measured, we have not turned it, okay? And on each armhole, we're going to use ½ inch to turn it. So if you add up the 2 ½ inch, it will give you 1 inch, okay? So simply subtract 1 inch from each of the necklines, okay? Now, on our pattern paper, here is our center back. So we'll start our marking from the back neckline. So the back neckline, we got it as 12. So we'll subtract 1 and we'll be left with 11. So 11 inches divided by 2 will give us 5.5 inches, okay? Remember I said that we're subtracting 1 inch from each of the necklines that we measured, okay? So back neckline of 12 inches, we're subtracting 1 inch and we're left with 11. So 11 inches divided by 2 will give us 5.5 inches. Now I'm placing my tape from the center back and I'll make a mark on 5.5 inches. Now we need to measure the sleeve. Remember we got our sleeve as 6.8 inches, okay? Remember the calculation that we did before we arrived at 6.8 inches. Now I'll place my tape from from the center back neckline that we just marked, and I will mark my 6.8 inches, okay? Then we'll move over to the front neckline. Now, 12.25 is what we got. We're subtracting 1, and that will give us 11.25. So 11.25 divided by 2, that will give us 5.6 inches, okay? So I'll go ahead and mark my 5.6 inches, okay? Remember that this pattern is on fold. All right, so we're just marking one side. Now I will proceed to add ½ inch to that for turning, okay? Now I will highlight this part, okay? I'll highlight it so that we will understand it better. So here is my back, I'll call it my back neckline, or you can call it your center back line, okay? Now this mid part is for the sleeve, okay? This is just the area where her hand will come out, okay? I don't know, but I just hope you understand what I'm saying, okay? So that's the part where her hand is coming out, or you can call it the sleeve. I think it's better we call it sleeve, okay? And here is the center front neckline, okay? So if you take a look at the cape, you can see the center back, the mid part, and the center front neckline, okay? So this is it for the cape. Now let's determine the length of the cape, okay? And I want mine to be 12 inches, okay? I want it to be 12 inches wide, okay? Now plus 1 inch allowance, which is ½ inch for attaching to the neckline and ½ inch for hemming, so it makes it 13 inches. All right, so the cape length, the cape width is 13 inches. All right, and from the center front we are going to come down by 1.25 inches, okay? And we're going to connect from the 1.25 inches to the 13 inches width, okay? And here we have it. So our cape is ready. Is that simple? Okay, so I'll go ahead and cut this out. Now, so from the center back, we will need to add ½ inch for turning. Okay, remember that we're going to be turning this cape. So I'm simply adding my ½ inch for turning of the cape on the center back. Remember, I have already added my ½ inch for turning on the center front. So you don't need to miss out this part. Now I'll proceed to cut this out, and you need to place this on a bias, okay? So you need to fold your fabric on a bias form, then you go ahead and pin down your pattern and cut out, okay? So because you need it to be a little bit stretchy. If you place your fabric just straight and cut out, your cape will not come out nice. You need to first fold your fabric on a bias form, then you go ahead and pin down this our cape pattern on it, and you cut out, okay? So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll cut it on the fashion fabric and on the lining, and I'll turn it, then I'll show us. Okay, and here we have it. I have transferred, okay? I have also stitched it. Now let me take us through the stitching method, okay? So if you take a look, you will see the area that looks like a rectangle. Now this is the part that we labeled as sleeve, okay? So you will need to go ahead and turn it. Remember our 6.8 inches that we got as our sleeve? Now that particular space, I stitched it down, okay? So the center back and the center front, those areas are open, okay? The sleeve part is the only part I stitched and turned. All right, so this is it. Now we will proceed to attach the cape to the dress, okay? So this is the dress. We're starting from the center front, so you need to go ahead and pin. All right, so I'll use the pin to demonstrate how I will be attaching it, or how I'll be sewing it with my sewing machine. So you go ahead and pin it to the center front, and you pin it all the way to the armhole. But once you get to the armhole, you need to stop ½ inch before the end of the armhole, okay? Now I'll come in with the back pattern, but before you do this, you need to join your fabric, okay? So you need to join the front and the back before you attach the cape. All right, now to fix the back cape, you need to go away from the armhole by 0.5 inch, all right, which is what we subtracted. So you go away from the armhole by 0.5 inch and you go ahead and just attach your cape. This is simply what I'm doing. All right. So our sleeve space, you can see that's the only area that we have turned. The rest, we're going to use our lining to turn it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the second cape. Then I'll attach it and I'll place my lining on top of this. Okay. And I'll use the lining to turn the fashion fabric. All right, and here we have it. So I'm done joining the cape. All right, so like I explained earlier, I went ahead to join the fashion fabric first together, and I joined the lining together also. Then I used the lining to turn the fashion fabric, okay, with the cape in between. All right, so you can see how neat the cape area is. Okay, now let's go ahead and attach our flare. All right, so I told us earlier that we're going to be having a slight alteration to the original style. All right, so I'll go ahead and just measure from the side back, from one side back joining to the other. All right, now what I have there is 16.5. okay, so I will go ahead now and come in with our flare. Okay, so here it is. Now I have both the fashion fabric and the lining pinned. So you remember our initial calculation. Okay, we got our radius to be 16.8. Okay, and our length as 28.5. All right, so we're going to go ahead and shapen the flare. All right, so the flare is going to be have a high-low. So from the center front, I'm coming up by 8 inches, okay? So we are shortening the center front by 8 inches. Now, I'll go ahead and just slant it towards the back, okay? Just with a slight curve. You don't want it to be too sharp, all right? Or too pointed. Just with a slight curve, I will connect it to it's slightly after the midpoint. Okay, so I would not say that we're connecting to the midpoint. All right, so I will just go ahead and connect it using my chalk. All right, and here we have it. Now I'll come in with my scissors and we will cut. Please take note that I have both the fashion fabric and the lining pinned together. All right, and here we have it. I have cut out the 8 inches that we marked. Now I'll proceed to turn the fashion fabric with the lining, okay, and I will give it a slight pleat in the front. Okay, so and that will be it. I'll show us the finished look. Here we have it. I'm done. Now we have the tiny opening here. All right, so this is the only opening we have here for accessing the inside of the gown, and I'll use my needle and thread to do a blind stitch there. Okay, now here we have it. Here is our finished dress. So take a look at the cape. You will see that area, that our 6.8, okay, that we turned. All right, so you can see how neat the cape is. Okay, so let's look at the lower part. All right, so here's the lower part, and here's the inside. Now this dress is fully lined. Okay, it's fully lined, and the fitting is just something else. All right, so here it is on the mannequin, and that's the end of the tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. Kindly subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.